I decided to make some yummy bagels. So I have let this rise overnight, and I used the recipe in the book that we have. And so after it's risen and it's doubled in size, I take my plop out and I'm going to just kind of flatten it out here and then let it sit for 10 minutes. So just kind of let that flatten out, let the all of the oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank on what it's called. I don't know. But let it just kind of sit and relax for 10 minutes. And then after those 10 minutes, then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so my timer went off for the 10 minutes. The gluten has kind of had an opportunity to rest. I am now going to section off parts of it, like, you know, my dough, and make them into the little bagels. So I like to I've done them in different sizes, but I like to try to keep my bagel around 4.5, sometimes 5 ounces per bagel. So I'm going to use my bench scraper, and I am going to kind of just section this off, turn on my scale, and make sure it goes to ounces. So that's different than the grams, which is how we measure everything out. So just make sure that you zero it out for ounces, and then just kind of cut it, and then I flip it over. That's 3. Like I said, I kind of like to do anywhere between 4 and 5 ounces. So I'm just going to cut all mine first, and then I'll do the next step. That's 3.9. I'll cut a little piece and put it on there. 4.5. Boop. I flip it over, by the way, if you see me flipping it when I put it on the scale, because the bottom is actually a little bit more stickier than the top. So the reason I do that is because then when I actually fold it up together to make the bagel, then the smooth part from being against the countertop ends up being the top of my bagel. It just looks prettier. That one's 4.3. They're all a little bit different, so, and that is okay, because it doesn't have to be perfect. That was only 2.5. 3.7. Oop, that one's 5 now. I'm gonna take that off. I like it. I like about 4.5. Okay, so I measured them all out, and I kind of have an odd number. So I have one that's going to be a little pile of extras. It's going to be my baby one. Okay, so what I do after I have put them all into piles, they're all about 4 ounces, is I'm basically going to, it kind of looks like this, and I'm basically going to just kind of fold it in, like fold the edges in. So just go around, fold all the edges in. And so now, this is the top now. So it's kind of reminds me of a dumpling. And I just kind of pinch it all together, because you don't want it to come out. Pinch it all together. And then you can see, look how pretty the top is. And I just kind of do a little smash flatten it out a little bit, and then put it onto my parchment covered cookie sheet. So the parchment paper helps it so that it doesn't stick. So I just kind of go through, and I'm gonna do that to each one of my bagels. Make kind of like my little dumpling. Pinch it all together so it doesn't come undone. Flip it over and kind of hit it a little bit to and the reason I do that is to kind of flatten out this bottom. So you can kind of see like this bottom doesn't look as pretty as the top. So this will be the top of our bagel. But that's okay. Doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm gonna go and do that to every single one of these. Okay, so I finished getting them all into about 4 ounces, putting them together, and now they're kind of sitting on my cookie sheet with the parchment paper underneath. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put holes in the middle of each one of these. So when you do that, basically what I do is I grab one of my little bowls here, and I'm going to take my thumbs. My fingers are kind of on like the back like this. And I'm going to take my thumbs and I'm basically going to put a hole in the middle and just kind of peel this apart so you can kind of stick your 2 thumbs in there. So see, now I have a little kind of hole. I'm going to put both my thumbs in. Here's the backs of my fingers. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of squeeze ever so gently around the bagel. And basically what that's doing is it's stretching out the hole a little bit so it gets a little bit bigger. We want to do that because as this rises for another 10 to 15 minutes after this step, you're going to notice that hole is going to get a little bit smaller. So we do want to kind of make that hole. And voila, there's our little donut, or our little bagel. And so I'm going to do that to each one of these. And then after I am done putting holes in each one of them, I am going to let it rise for about 10 to 15 minutes. So typically I do 10 minutes if you really want my exact number. But so I let it rise for about 10 minutes. And I don't put anything over top of it. I just let it air rise. And while that's rising, then what I do is I come over to my stove. I get my saucepan ready, and I fill it up with water because we're actually gonna boil this in our next step. So you're gonna fill that up with water and bring that to a boil while the bagels are in their next rising process. So bring that water to a boil, and then we'll meet for our next step. Okay, so this is gonna be your next step of doing the bagels. So I have the water prepared, and it is on a light boil. It's not a rapid boil. I have it on medium. And then I also have my oven already ready at 425. So what I do is I take one of the bagels, and I'm actually gonna flip it upside down and put it in first upside down. So I think I can fit in 4 here. And then I take my silver spatula just to kind of move it so they have enough space in there. And then you'll notice that they'll start to float. I put my timer on for 1 minute, and I have it on 1 minute for each side. And then as soon as that timer goes off, then we'll flip it and do another minute on each side. Okay, so my timer is going off, so I'm just gonna hit cancel. I'm gonna flip each of these. Wow. And then I'm gonna put my timer on for another minute. Let them boil. Okay, so my timer is done. So I'm just gonna take each one of them out and I'm gonna put it back onto my baking sheet that has the parchment paper on there so they don't stick. I'm gonna put my next round in. Kind of stuck on the edge, so I want to try to get it off the edge. Put my timer on. And then you can choose if you want to put anything on top. I love the everything bagel seasoning that I get from Sam's Club. So I put this on my bagels and they're super yummy. So I just kind of sprinkle it on top. And because they're wet, it sticks to them. So it's important that you do this step right away, because if they become dry, then they're not gonna stick. So I just am gonna do the same process to these ones, and as soon as the timer goes off, I'll flip them, put the timer on for another minute, and then when that timer goes off, I'm gonna take them out, and I'm gonna put the everything bagel seasoning on top. Again, you can use, like if you want onion on top, or if you want it plain, totally up to you, but you have different options with that. Okay, so all my bagels are done. They're all prepped and ready to go into the oven. So I throw them in there, put my timer on for 15 minutes. And then after those 15 minutes, they will be all good to go. Okay, so timer just went off. We are gonna take the bagels out and you can see how pretty they look. And then what you're gonna wanna do is you're going to take them off of the cookie sheet and you're gonna put them over onto the rack so that they can continue cooling without being on the metal, because the metal will continue to cook it. So you wanna make sure that you put it onto a cooling rack. And then after they cool a little bit, they are ready to eat. Just know that when you actually cut through them, because they're so fresh, they can actually like squeeze and kind of mush, like you can deform them when they're so hot and fresh. But I would encourage you to put some cream cheese on it or some butter and enjoy.